Friends, this is Steve Dupuy for the Bible News Prophecy Program with Dr. Bob Thiel. Dr. Thiel, in the introduction to our radio broadcast, our announcer informs our listeners that this program is dedicated to world events in light of Bible prophecy. I have read little snippets of news articles lately regarding government and big tech censorship. Would you first address the world events aspect of that news and then discuss the event in light of Bible prophecy?
Certainly. We continue to see more and more movement towards censoring information that various governments and big tech don't like, particularly on the internet. I saw an article that says that Mark Tobby has termed this as the censorship industrial complex, which is a network of big tech government agencies, NGOs, think tanks, and academic initiatives, and so-called fact checkers. And he says they've been caught admitting that they've censored factual stuff. He says more telling is this group's attitude toward what they call malinformation, typically information that's true, but it's contrary to preferred narratives of the censor. And this article says it's chilling that there's no consideration of whether the information is true or the public has a right to know. And so the article ends with, welcome to the censorship industrial complex. Now, let me add, it's gotten worse since artificial intelligence is now getting involved. But even before then, we've had a situation like with Facebook, where they'll categorize you based on what you post or what your friends post or write about. And it kind of reminds me of China's social credit score. Right. But as far as use of artificial intelligence, there are other people who have concerns about it. This one article I saw this week said, recently the United States Department of Homeland Security gave millions of dollars to an AI tech company in exchange for software that can detect sentiment and emotion in social media posts. And if they don't like it, consider it problematic, they send us to law enforcement. This article concludes with, what we can be sure of is AI is going to be around and ruling class are going to use it. We've already seen individuals have their comments censored purely based upon AI deeming the tone problematic. Wow. We're definitely living in tyranny, and if we think it can't get worse, we're constantly proven wrong.
Would you agree with that part of the article that claims it will get worse?
Certainly it's going to get worse, but we already have massive censorship that we're seeing. A couple of years back, YouTube removed one of our videos warning against Disney's promotion of perversion to children. And our video was considered to be a violation of its community standards. You know, last century, Disney could have been eligible for being prosecuted for promoting something that we warned about. Right. And recently, YouTube removed one of our videos about a study done by the University of Florida researchers on transgenderism, where we quoted scriptures. They said it was inappropriate. Well, the truth is not inappropriate. I've actually submitted an appeal to YouTube, and we'll see if something happens with that.
In this case, are you saying that a study done by the University of Florida is an example of a secular world event, and the scriptures you quoted were an example of a response in light of Bible prophecy?
Yes.
Do you have any other examples?
Yeah. YouTube also censored a video we put out encouraging people to eat healthier to strengthen their immune systems. When I asked YouTube if there's anything inaccurate, they said that's not the issue. It's just in line with their narrative that they preferred. Wow. And furthermore, back in 2022, they retroactively removed a video we did in November 2019, warning that a difficult to treat pestilence would come. We were accurate. Anyway, since we didn't trust YouTube's enforcement and their changing standards, we have that up on other platforms.
So because these companies are private, they can basically do what they want to within the law without worrying about getting fired or re-election. But does the government get involved in any way?
Yes. First of all, the government did rule recently that YouTube can pull it no matter what they want, so you're kind of stuck. Now, the U.S. government tends to deny that it's been involved. Yet, after Elon Musk bought Twitter, now called X, He revealed that U.S. government pressured Twitter to censor, and executives of other big tech companies have said the same thing. This past week, Representative Jim Jordan from Ohio revealed more evidence the White House pressured Facebook to censor or remove accounts of the so-called disinformation dozen. Then yesterday, federal appeals court ruled the Biden administration most likely violated Americans' First Amendment rights when it was working on censoring speech. It says, we find that the White House, acting in concert with the Surgeon General's office, likely coerced the platforms to make their moderation decisions. This means censorship and removal, moderation, and significantly encouraged the platform's decisions. We find that the FBI, too, likely coerced the platforms into moderating content and encouraged them to do so by effecting changes to their moderation policies, both in violation of the First Amendment. So much for so-called First Amendment rights and the U.S. government not getting involved.
So it seems the government passes a law defining hate speech as an illegal form of speech, thereby providing the tech companies the guidance they need to implement censorship algorithms. Is this addressed in light of Bible prophecy?
Yes, the Bible has long taught that a famine of the word is coming. But we seem to be like in the first stages of this right now. The Bible also tells of a time, which we're now in, where a certain amount of self-censorship is needed. Amos 5, verse 13 says, therefore the prudent keep silent at that time, for it's an evil time. But Isaiah said we're supposed to cry out, spare not, and tell people their sins. So we're doing that. And one of the reasons is because Jesus said in John 9, verse 4, he says, I must work the works of him who sent me while it's still day. The night is coming when no one can work. Now, following Jesus's example, we haven't trusted YouTube, and that's the reason we use other platforms like BitChute, Rumble, Brighteon, Dailymotion, which, by the way, have these censored videos still up.
Okay. Is there censorship of speech in other countries as well as the USA?
Yes. And actually, the other countries, we'll use the group called the European Union, for one. They're actually much more upfront about their censorship than the U.S. government wants to publicly admit. The European Union passed something called the Digital Services Act, and this is another step towards 666 controls. This act went into effect on August 25th, 2023, to be implemented against large companies starting August 28th, 2023, and smaller platforms starting February 24th, 2024. One reporter said, at that point, it would be very difficult to escape the reach of this new law. He says, for many years, the internet was one of the last bastions of free speech, but now everything has changed.
It seems as if elected officials have created various agencies to which they appoint unelected bureaucrats who are insulated from job loss. The bureaucrats, in turn, implement the will of the elected officials. What might be the consequences of the bureaucrats' enforcement of the Digital Services Act?
Much more censorship. The EU has made the penalties for non-compliance so severe that social media companies will have to censor a lot to reduce their chances of a fine. This act also, by the way, has issues as far as religion and religious ideas. And this also seems to have already affected companies such as Google in its advertising policies. For example, in the Continuing Church of God, we've actually had over 500 million, that's over 500 million, computer impressions of our promoting literature, etc., in our ads, but they've been suspended. Not because it's hateful or inaccurate, but because they have to do with religious beliefs. Now, you might think, well, that's an advertising policy. As a normal person, you're probably not going to get affected by any of this. Well, that's probably not true. You might think what you talk in a private chat on the internet is private, but it's not. There's a video game, very popular. 90 million people play it each month or something, called Call of Duty. Now, I've never played it. But the game's publisher, Activision, announced it's going to use artificial intelligence to listen in to the voice chat of players to punish anyone using hate speech or discriminatory language. And this is going to be in effect starting November 10th of 2023. And I suspect part of this has to do with this Digital Services Act. Now, as far as the use of artificial intelligence goes, we put out various videos on it over the years warning about its potential and expectation of totalitarian abuse. But I want to add one other part. We can see this eventually happening to texting and even things people say over their cellular telephones.
Okay. So explain a little bit more about what might be meant by totalitarian 666 abuse.
Well, the Digital Services Act reminds me of something the Apostle Peter was inspired to write. This is from 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 18. It says, they speak great swelling words of emptiness. They lure to the lusts of the flesh, through lewdness, the ones who actually escaped, whose lives live in error. While they promise them liberty, they themselves are slaves of corruption. For by whom a person is overcome, by him he's brought into bondage. And they promise liberty, their safety, but that's not what they're doing. This is a step toward expanding the censorship industrial complex. You could call it systemic censorship if you want. And back in November 2018, the European Union announced it was going to spend €1 billion on a quantum computer and billions more on related matters. This will allow them to censor, etc. Now, as far as 666 goes, that spending, along with the Digital Services Act, is getting the Europeans to the point they can fulfill various prophecies, such as what I'm going to read from Revelation chapter 13, starting verse 15. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many who would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. If they're monitoring everything you're saying, they can find out if you're worshiping the beast or not. Verse 16, he causes all, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark in their right hand or on their foreheads, that no one may buy or sell except one who's got the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it's the number of a man. His number is 666. This totalitarian ability to control buying and selling and worship, if you will, to the degree listed in Scripture, was not possible when Jesus had the Apostle John pen the book of the Apocalypse over 1900 years ago. It's now possible.
Bible prophecy, what else should we be looking for that will help us know when the end is at hand?
Well, in the Old Testament, so thousands of years ago, prophet Amos was inspired. This is Amos 8, verse 11 to 12, to write, behold, the days are coming, says the Lord God, that I will send a famine on the land, not a famine of bread, nor thirst for water, but of hearing the words of the Lord. They shall wander from sea to sea, from north to the east, and run to and fro, seeking the word of the Lord, and they won't find it. So this has got to, amongst other things, to do with the internet. Now, let me say that Matthew 24:14 about the gospel being preached to the world of witness is going to happen first. But afterwards, we're going to see more totalitarian controls and more censorship from what can be called the censorship industrial complex. We're getting closer to the day where technologies that were unheard of when God inspired Amos and John to warn what would happen. Technologies like computers and artificial intelligence. And the totalitarian beast of Revelation is going to use this to assist his 666 reign, as well as to enforce the coming famine of the word. Snares are being laid.
Give us a word on how we might be able to avoid those snares.
Jesus said in Luke 21, verse 34 to 36, but take heed to yourself, lest your hearts be carried down with carousing, carelessness, life, drunkenness, and that day come on you unexpectedly, because come as a snare on all those who dwell on the face of the earth. Watch therefore and pray always, that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. Various snares are being set up. What's being called the censorship industrial complex is being more firmly set in place. The signs of it are there for any with eyes to see or ears to hear.
Thank you, Dr. Teal. For more interviews with Dr. Teal, in addition to written as well as audio articles, Visit our website at BibleNewsProphecy.net. This is Steve Dupuy for the Bible News Prophecy Program.